Okay, and so before we start, I just have a couple of things to say. So good morning, everyone, and welcome to the second session in track one, where we'll hear from Dale Musselman at OCLC WebJunction and Lotus Norton-Wisla at the Washington State University Center for Digital Scholarship and Curation on the topic of developing digital stewardship training. My name is Jeremiah, and I'll be the conference committee member moderating this session. Before I hand things over to our presenters, I just want to quickly point out that we'll answer questions at the end of the session, but you can submit your questions at any time by clicking the Q&A button in the bottom bar of your Zoom screen. If you don't see that bar, you should be able to make it appear by hovering your cursor at the bottom of the screen. There is also a chat button there that you can use for comments or discussion, or if you have some tech issues. But please use the Q&A button for asking questions. We'll answer those by the end of the presentation. And with that, I will pass things on to Dale and Lotus.
Hi, just sorry. Yes, unmute myself. And let me share the slides. And hopefully that looks correct to everybody. So this is our talk about developing digital stewardship training. My name is Dale Musselman. I am a senior program manager at WebJunction, which is a program of OCLC. I would like to start our talk today with a land acknowledgement. I acknowledge that I live and work on the traditional land of the first people of Seattle, the Duwamish people, past and present, and honor with gratitude the land itself and the Duwamish tribe.
And I'm Lotus Norton-Wisla. I'm the community archivist at the Center for Digital Scholarship and Curation at Washington State University. And I'd also like to read a land acknowledgement prepared in collaboration with WSU's Native American programs. The Washington State University Pullman campus is located on the homelands of the Nimipu, or Nez Perce tribe, and the Palouse people. We acknowledge their presence here since time immemorial, and we recognize their continuing connection to the land, to the water, and to their ancestors. And I share this with the understanding that land acknowledgements must be paired with action, continual learning, and building and maintaining relationships of trust. Next, Dale will take us through the plan for our presentation today.
So we're talking about our digital stewardship training project, and we're going to start off by, Lotus is going to start off by stepping back and talking about the Tribal Digital Stewardship Cohort Program that the CDSC ran, which was the precursor, so the original program that we have now adapted into the Digital Stewardship Training Program, and we like a lot of the same words jumbled around in different orders. We'll talk about what it was like to adapt what was originally primarily in-person training to online on demand, and then broadening the scope of that training to address not only tribal archives, libraries, and museums as the original did, to include now small public libraries. We'll talk a bit about some of the learnings and talking specifically about the things we've learned along the way as in the project team. And then we'll end with just a brief introduction to the digital collections stewardship courses, which will be coming out in a few weeks.
So I'll be taking us back several years, back to 2015. This is when the TDSCP and the CDSC were first created, and the time when I first got my job out here in Pullman, Washington. And the program began as a hybrid face-to-face and online training program focused on digital stewardship in tribal libraries, archives, and museums, or TALMs. And over the first 4 cycles of the program, we've had 46 individuals from 25 tribal nations, Alaska Native nations, and Native Hawaiian organizations who have taken part in this 1-year training. And the TDSCP was designed and directed by Dr. Kimberly Kristen, the director of the CDSC as well, who's provided leadership and vision for this training, that project, as well as many other overlapping projects at the CDSC. And Dr. Kristen designed this original IMLS collaborative agreement. That was the first few years of the program, to address key needs that she learned about through a few different sources. First, there's Mukurtu CMS, which is an open source content management system and community archives platform, which is designed with Indigenous communities, and it's developed and supported at WSU. So in conducting these early Mukurtu workshops, Kristen and her colleagues learned that many TOMs wanted to provide culturally appropriate online access, but really needed more tools and training in digitization, in archives management, in cataloging, preservation, to just get to that point of online access. And WSU sought to address this need through a few different things, but one of those was the Sustainable Heritage Network, which offered hands-on workshops in some of these areas. And this was both at conferences as well as directly with Indigenous nations. But it was still only for a few days at a time, and people did want more training and ongoing support. Additionally, through the SHN, there's also online resources that are open, available, and available to be adapted and reused. So you'll see some of that on the SHN as well. And another really important source of figuring out these key needs was the Sustaining Indigenous Culture Report, which was in 2012 by the Association of Tribal Archives, Libraries, and Museums, or ATALM. So in this 2012 ATALM report, Kristen saw some of these documented needs for topic-specific and hands-on workshops in digital stewardship, as well as options for distance learning. And finally, Kristen also researched Indigenous cohort-based learning that was taking place across the country. And I've listed a few of these on the slides, and I think Mercy will share some of them in our chat box too. But things like the Knowledge River program in Arizona, the Convening Great Lakes Culture Keepers in the Great Lakes region, a lot of really wonderful work going on that was an inspiration for this cohort model. Next slide, please. In addition to some of those needs I was mentioning, I'll share a few additional needs that the TOM participants articulated and demonstrated throughout the program. So one is the importance of unique contexts. And, we really learned from people as they emphasized that while the program was such an amazing opportunity to find common ground in their work and learn from other Indigenous nations, each nation has a distinct historical and political and cultural context that informs their work with digital collections, as well as their collaborations with other institutions. And another really important point is appropriate access, or the control, the need for control over sharing, and the need for flexible access options. So one of the really important components of the TDSCP that appealed to many people was the opportunity to use Mukurtu CMS, to learn how to use that software, but also, think about the ideas underpinning that. So Mukurtu CMS, the archiving platform that offers granular access options. It was really important for everyone who is part of the program to have control over their materials, their traditional knowledge, and then how it was shared or not shared with many different audiences. And it includes not just the technical considerations, but really a range of decisions around policies and planning and relationships. And these ideas aren't just for digital collections, but it's usually part of a larger conversation in an Indigenous nation about intellectual property, data sovereignty, and other topics. In addition to these, big ideas, some of the other things were work time. This was a need that really emerged. The need for the time to get away from the day-to-day duties of participants, and people just requested more and more time to just work on drafts of policies, to plan for their digital projects, as well as have that live feedback from other cohort members. It was all very beneficial, but it was a huge need that people identified over and over again. And then the hands-on training aspect, that was a big need too, just the opportunity to really look at this different steps of digitization, to go through it themselves, and then have a basis to understand the process and make their own workflows, and purchase equipment, and even just, manage outsourcing too. So these are just really a few highlights of some identified needs. And next slide. In the program, we were able to learn and respond to these and other needs. So I'll kind of take us through a few of those. And one is the focus on relationships and the cohort model. I think this was just one of the biggest outcomes. At the end of the year of training, we would talk with everyone, we'd have conversations and just give people a chance to reflect on their thoughts of the program and give us feedback. And the majority of participants said, like, hands down, it was the relationships formed through the cohort program that was really one of the most important outcomes for them. And we also found that this aspect brought a lot of support to the learning going on. And then another thing that we were able to do in the in-person and online training was being able to tailor the training and respond to feedback. And we were able to do that like each and every year, based on what people's goals were, and what their interests were and what formats they were working with. And then even in each week of the training, we were able to just be really agile and respond to what people were wanting to learn and what they were wanting to shift and focus on. And we also used feedback from prior years to then build an improved experience for the later years. This came into play a lot. And so all of that, of course, took a lot of time and energy and staff resources that really wouldn't have been possible without the grant funding, the specific grant funding. And then some other things, going back to those unique contexts for each Indigenous nation, we really learned a lot about respecting those contexts and making space for the differences. And we learned that through some of the site visits that we did at the very beginning of the program, as well as a lot of the participants taking time to teach us and speak with us and correct us when that was needed. So an example of this would be adapting our instruction for writing policies. And in teaching, we learned that there were many different types of policy formats, approval structures, timelines, and people involved in each department as well as each nation. And we really changed the way that we led policy instruction and discussion to be really more open to this and to allow for that variety of needs. And then finally, appropriate access, going back to that, the access needs. And I think, at the time, the TDSCP's approach was really different than a lot of other available trainings. And it was really important that those specific community values and cultural contexts and Indigenous knowledge systems were always at the forefront for each of the nations that were a part of the program when it came to access and use. And some of this learning is illustrated from a quote from Dr. Kristen in 2017. It was from an interview with the National Digital Stewardship Alliance. And she was speaking about the program, but then also kind of addressing the field at large. So Dr. Kristen says, we need to act to implement ethical procedures in all aspects of our workflows, from accessioning collections and creating metadata to digitizing and providing access. We need to recognize that open is only one form of access, and it often repeats the original colonial violence of dispossession. So we learned so much from the participants of this program about the many forms of access and use that questioned or pushed back against the legacies of colonial violence and erasure. And, this approach to the teaching was really important for this training and the ways that the cohort members, created their policies and created their procedures. But these understandings are also really important for institutions that hold Indigenous materials and ones that want to collaborate with Indigenous nations, like Washington State University, for one example. And I also want to take this opportunity to recognize the work of Indigenous scholars writing about these topics, about LIS, about Indigenous Knowledge Organization, and digital technologies. Dr. Sandra Littletree, Miranda Belarde-Lewis, Marissa Duarte, Jennifer O'Neill. These are just a few scholars, but we have some links to their publications in the chat, and I think we'll have a handout later on as well. Oh, thank you, Dale. You're really good at advancing the slides without me even saying. A key outcome for this whole year of training was the digital stewardship life cycles. And these are just this representation of the specific steps of digital stewardship in each TOMS context. So we shared this really simple model as a starting place, outlining what we would just say is 4 big buckets of get it, check it, save it, and share it. And then, as you can see from this picture in May 2017, over the year, the pairs would kind of create and adapt their own life cycles based on their goals and resources and the strengths in their communities. Also, they were using like the languages and ideas and images that really tied into their specific contexts. And it really wasn't just the technical needs, but it was this larger holistic view. And the concepts of cultural checks were really important to the life cycles as well, like in the instruction and in how people developed them. And that was just really making sure with a cultural check for each stage to make sure to embed cultural values, concerns, and protocols within each and every stage. So as an example of a cultural check for a TOM, in the share it stage, this might be something like working with an existing cultural committee or even like forming a new committee to meet about access protocols for new digital items or collections and have that opportunity to have input from tribal elders or other people who have that stake in the community. And then finally, to wrap up my portion of our presentation and bridge this to today, to what the work that we're doing now and to Dale's slides, I just want to share this example. This is a customized digital stewardship lifecycle from Keao George, and she works at the Hula Preservation Society in Hawaii. And Keao works with terabytes of data in many different formats for video interviews and related materials from Hula practitioners. So Keao is also one of the interviewees who is providing examples and advice for the new digital collection stewardship courses. So back in 2019 to 2020, Keao used this process of creating and gifting a lei as the basis of her digital stewardship life cycle. So the process of gathering the flowers, preparing them, stringing them together, and sharing. And as you can see in the image on the left, where Keao is first starting to brainstorm her ideas on a whiteboard, that was, the first session, first in 2019. And then after revising for like a year or more, Keao on the right has this picture of the life cycle, kind of like the broad view, the 100-foot view of the life cycle, with a design that an artist friend helped her create. And she also created a written document that really broke down like each and every step with a lot of detail, a lot more of those technical details. And we will also share in the chat a video clip where Keao walks through the process of her creating this. So now Keao and the team at HPS can use this digital stewardship lifecycle internally as well as externally. And this video from Keao and then many others will be used in the new co-created courses to use as an example for other learners to draw from. And now I'll turn it over to Dale to talk more about OCLC's perspective in this process.
Hi, thanks, Lotus. Yes, so also in the way that the connection happened between especially the WebJunction staff and the CDSC is that in 2017, Kim Christian was invited to present at OCLC, and she gave a talk titled "We Have Never Been Neutral," and there'll be a link to that in the chat as well. in it, as you can probably guess at this point, and from the background that Lotus has shared, she was presenting a point of view that libraries are in fact not neutral, that they instead represent a particular Western cultural worldview that's often imposed on other cultures. And one of the examples of this is ideas about the importance of sort of maximum openness. And it was a very interesting for some of us there on the OCLC staff, which is well represented in some ways by this tagline for OCLC, which is what is known must be shared, in a very declarative and definite statement that doesn't brook any exceptions. So that was really, I think that opened up a lot of eyes across the organization, definitely in the research division that I'm a part of. And at WebJunction, the other thing that was very interesting as we got to know more about the CDSC and the original project is just that the idea of it as a training project, and the fact that we could see really clear connections between the tribal archives, libraries, and museums and small public libraries. We knew that there was a lot of interest in digitization and digital collections in small public libraries, but there was very little activity actually going on, especially at that time. So we were interested in the possibility of kind of adapting this training. We knew that we could not deliver it in that same way. Our interest is in scaling training, providing training to as wide an audience as possible. So we started talking to Dr. Kristen and the CDSC staff about this. And as it happened, they were at that point ready to start looking at next steps and ways that they could broaden their reach. So we got together, designed a project to adapt this high-touch, primarily in-person cohort program into an online on-demand format. You can tell also, but from Lotus's description of how the original went, there's going to be, it's not going to be the same training. So we wanted to also, the big thing we wanted to change besides the format is to add that small public library audience and talk to both audiences at the same time in the same courses. So in 2020, we received an IMLS grant to fund the project, and for the last about 16 months, we've been working on producing a series of courses, and those courses will be offered both on WebJunction in our LMS and also by the CDSC at their Sustainable Heritage Network site. So I mentioned the needs of small public libraries and the connections. I think a lot of these are fairly obvious. That were the things that struck us first. You know, the limited resources in terms of finances, staff, technical support, technical skills often, the fact that they're often isolated. And I think also there's often a confidence issue, I think, in both kinds of organizations, and in small and rural organizations generally, and bringing a new ambitious program that involves technology. We knew that supporting, improving, building confidence was going to be key part of this project. Again, as we started adapting the training, we saw the same things that you heard about that we knew were not going to be directly translated into an online on-demand format. We don't have the same social learning touch. We can't, in a self-paced course, we can't adjust to the individual learner. We have to provide ways for the individual learner to adjust their learning and to adjust what they choose to do. So we knew we were going to lose that cohort experience, but we also knew that we were going to gain some things that you can do in self-paced, where especially the learner being in their institution as they do the learning, that we could give them assignments where they could actually be working in their institution to for instance, create and adapt their policies, to do their planning, to have brainstorming sessions with their colleagues. There's a lot of ways that we can leverage the strengths of self-paced. We also, we knew that, as Lotus mentioned, we wanted to bring those practitioner voices in. And so we ended up interviewing both original CDSC 12 participants in the original program, as well as some new small public libraries that had also been doing creating digital collections. And so those are cut in, there's a combined thematically and cut in throughout the courses. And I think they really add a lot. And we know from long experience, we know that practitioner voices that the learner can identify with and see themselves represented in are extremely important for making it seem accessible and boosting confidence. Learning, so just quickly, a few things. It was really interesting working on this project because of the whole cultural awakening. It's not really an awakening, but day to day, your own cultural bubble is really something that you don't even see. For me, the clearest example of this difference in cultures and really coming to grips and understanding how much it was really a thing was this idea of customizing the digital life cycle. Lotus talked about how important that was. And it was very important to the original participants. So as we started down this path, I really had to just set aside my own personal response, which was that I didn't understand it, honestly. I didn't understand why it was important. I didn't understand why it mattered to people so much. And it took me a while. And a couple things, I finally had a couple of realizations. One was, it's really just simpler than I thought. I was thinking of it as this customization was a big thing, but a lot of it is really essentially translating this technical linear Western process into a very different way of understanding and interacting with the world, of organizing knowledge, one that values metaphor and storytelling, and to turn this into something that's meaningful to the participants, but also really especially to allow them to take their plans back to their tribe and to share and get buy-in from people about the projects that they wanted to create. And it had to be made into a, sort of translated into a meaningful format in that context. And, Dr. Kristen was telling us from the beginning about the organization of knowledge was different. And how important it was for tribal institutions to share their culture and history in appropriate ways that's respectful of the culture and protocols. I think this is another thing that really we had to get a little ways in to really fully appreciate the implications of this and what it meant in terms of trying to create training for people who are from a different culture than you are. And finally, I'll just, a smaller point, but one that was sort of an odd realization was realizing that how much I think some of us, I'll just talk for myself personally, just in day-to-day life tend to lump Native American tribes together and not think of them so much as distinct individual nations and cultures with a lot of difference between them and different, they are distinct different cultures in the same way that any other nations are. So we will be putting out these digital collection stewardship course series. We have updated the lifecycle model. You can see it there. It's multicolored and it's 5 stages instead of 4. The images from the last few slides have all been screenshots from the courses. There is a real strong focus on planning, policies, and decision, less so on hands-on technology, as you can imagine. For a self-paced, we're not going to focus on that. There is a workbook that goes across all of the courses that becomes an action plan for actually implementing the work in your institution. And we are creating learning group facilitator guides that will support peer facilitators in getting together and organizing groups of learners to go through the courses together in sort of a model that we've been working with for the last several years. That is sort of similar to, I always think of it in terms of like a book club. You don't need a trainer because you've got the courses giving you the instruction. You just need someone to organize the group and manage the discussion.
Okay. So we've reached our time. I'll
Okay.
if you wanna wrap up.
Yep. Thanks. Yeah. Sorry, we're a little late.
Oh, no worries.
So that is the end. These two links, the Sustainable Heritage Network, and then the OCLC Digital Stewardship is the project page on WebJunction. Those are the two best places to go for more information and to get the courses, to get the links to the course directly to the courses once they're available later in April. And there will also be this webinar on WebJunction in April 26th. Then you can sign up for that at the OCLC link as well.
Great. Well, that was great content. Thank you very much to Lotus and Dale and Mercy. Thanks for sharing with us today. I'm going to put the link to the other session into the chat just in case folks are going there. So just paste that in there. And let's see, put that to everyone. Okay, so our next session will begin in about 9 minutes. So for those who are sticking around here, you could just hang around. And for those who are going into track 2, I have the link in the chat there. So thanks again. We'll see you all in about 8 minutes.